easiest way to get attention is to be a victim. He's like, ooh, where he going with this?
Hey, it's the husband formerly known as Prince. Any luck getting a job?
Oh, they had me driving for Uber Eats, but there were too many damn rules. Don't touch the food, don't taste the food, drive on the road.
I'm sorry, Rowdy Weddy.
What the f is she talking about? She didn't know. The fuck? It's the royal family. They're the original race.
When Chris Rock came swinging, it wasn't just another celebrity roast. Oh no, this was a full-blown declaration of war. The kind of verbal slap that ricocheted around the globe and left Meghan Markle's carefully polished image trembling. Within months, something extraordinary, no, unprecedented, was unfolding across the comedy world. From London's glittering West End to the smoky comedy clubs of Los Angeles, comedians locked onto Meghan like heat-seeking missiles. And let me tell you, this wasn't random banter or casual jabs. This felt orchestrated, like a coordinated assault where the only target was Meghan's narrative. Joke after joke, set after set, the flames spread. Suddenly, it wasn't just gossip bloggers or tabloids dissecting her life. Professional comedians, the very people who thrive on truth wrapped in humor, had crowned her the ultimate punchline. And the wildfire? It spread across continents faster than Meghan could say, "Privacy, please."
Like the hip hop, the hibbit, hip hop, and you don't stop, erase them.
But here's where things turned explosive. The comedians weren't just mocking Meghan, they were dismantling her, piece by piece, narrative by narrative. Every claim she had built her brand upon, from playing innocent about royal protocols to painting herself as the eternal victim, was flipped on its head. And the genius? They used her own words, her own interviews, her own sound bites as weapons. Audiences weren't just laughing, they were howling, clapping, roaring with applause night after night. They weren't just entertained, they were liberated. It was as if the world had been holding its breath, tired of Meghan's polished story, and suddenly the comedians gave everyone permission to exhale in laughter.
Why does Meghan Markle make her own pretzel bags? They don't know why.
That's interesting. She takes it from one bag and puts it in another bag.
There's another bag.
And that confuses people.
And that's when the comedy blitz really began. 3 devastating waves that Meghan could never have predicted. First, the precision strikes. A-list comedians, the heavyweights, surgically tearing apart her most infamous claims. They didn't just joke, they dissected. Second, the global comedy tour wave. The phenomenon where Meghan transformed into a universal punchline, echoing from sold-out arenas to tiny comedy basements. And third, oh, the third wave, the brutal verdict. The kind of takedown so savage, so psychologically cutting, that it became the defining destruction of her entire public persona. And the mastermind behind it? A legendary comedian who didn't just crack jokes, he cracked open the entire facade she had so carefully built.
We want privacy! We want privacy! We want privacy!
But listen, while most comics were content to chase laughs, there was one who wasn't laughing. This one wasn't simply delivering punchlines, he was delivering demolition. His analysis was so chilling, so devastating, that audiences didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or gasp. He exposed Meghan's core strategy in a way no one else dared, and what he revealed. It was darker, far darker than anyone had been willing to say out loud. We'll get to that fatal blow in a moment, but first, let's roll back to the phenomenon that sparked this global comedy war.
We love American telly. My brother's fiance, Miss Meghan Markle, is on the American program Suits.
Yeah.
The only difference between that show and this is people watch this one.
Oh, hilarious.
It all began harmlessly, like whispers in a crowded room. Comedians slipped Meghan references into their regular sets. But then something wild happened. Audiences demanded more. Meghan had become comedy currency. The mere mention of her name sent audiences into frenzy, laughter, cheers, applause louder than most comics had ever heard. Clubs realized quickly, Meghan jokes weren't just funny, they were money. So soon it wasn't just punchlines sprinkled here and there, it was entire dedicated segments. Some comedians were crafting whole 15-minute sets just about her interviews, her contradictions, her truths. It all became ammo. And the transformation? Swift, merciless. Venues across the globe reported thunderous crowd reactions, audiences hanging on every jab, every roast. Social media couldn't keep up. Clips of comedians obliterating Meghan's credibility went viral at light speed, racking up millions of views, millions of shares. And with each repost, Meghan's once untouchable image cracked deeper.
Now, I'll be honest with you, before I watched it, I was not a fan of theirs. Now I've actually heard their side of the story, I f***ing hate them.
Here's the cruel twist of fate. The more Meghan tried to control her narrative, the worse it got. Every interview she gave, every Netflix documentary, every desperate attempt at a polished woe-is-me sit-down, she was unknowingly handing comedians new material. Each attempt at repairing her image turned into the next comedian's goldmine. It was tragic in a way, like watching someone dig their own grave, while a whole industry of comedians stood around gleefully taking notes. The comedy world had found their perfect target, and they weren't about to let her go.
The fuck are they talking about? I didn't know. That's like marrying into the Budweiser family and going, they drink a lot.
And then came Chris Rock, the man who fired the first real cannon. Rock zeroed in on Meghan's most infamous line, "I didn't know anything about the royal family." He didn't just joke about it, he dissected it like a surgeon holding a scalpel. The contempt in his delivery was sharp, unflinching. Audiences didn't just laugh, they roared, because Rock was voicing what millions had been thinking. How could Meghan Markle, an actress living in Hollywood, someone savvy enough to navigate the limelight, possibly claim ignorance about the world's most famous family? Rock laid it bare. The claim was absurd. And then, with masterful comedic timing, he hit them with the Budweiser analogy. It was so good, so on point, that even Meghan's staunchest defenders couldn't help but squirm.
But that shit she went through was not racism. It was just some in-law shit.
But Chris Rock wasn't done, not even close. His most devastating strike was yet to come. He went after Meghan and Harry's biggest weapon, the racism accusations, the bombshell that Meghan herself had wielded in interviews like a sword. And Rock? He snapped it in half with one observation so simple, so brutally logical, that the audience nearly lost their minds. Parents want to know what their baby's gonna look like. That's it. That was the kill shot. Rock didn't scream, didn't rant, he just said what millions had been silently thinking. The accusation Meghan thought was her strongest shield, Rock shredded it in a single breath. The room erupted. People weren't just laughing, they were relieved. Relieved that someone finally said the thing they'd been too afraid to whisper. And the brilliance of it all? Rock didn't attack Meghan or Harry personally, he went after the story. And that story was so full of holes that comedy practically wrote itself. Other comedians watched that moment like hawks. They saw the standing ovations, the thunderous applause, and the viral clips burning up social media, and suddenly, the floodgates opened. If Chris Rock could torch the royal contradictions and get love for it, why couldn't they?
They were complaining that to pay for their own security. They were not happy about that. Yeah, they were very worried about their safety, which I get that aspect of things. After 6 episodes, I wanted to attack them.
The comedy world lit up like fireworks. Rock had created the blueprint. He showed them it could be done, and done with elegance. Meghan and Harry weren't untouchable anymore. They were comedy gold waiting to be mined. And mined they were. But Rock's genius went beyond permission. He showed comedians how to do it with precision, how to turn contradictions into punchlines, how to make people laugh while pointing out serious truths about privilege, victimhood, and authenticity. It wasn't just funny, it was devastating.
You a grown-ass man. You can't still be living in your mama's house, Harry.
The ripple effects were immediate. Comedy clubs from New York to London started booking comedians specifically because they had Meghan material. Forget generic sets about dating and politics. If you had jokes about Meghan and Harry, you were guaranteed stage time. And the audiences? They weren't just laughing anymore. They were cheering, clapping, demanding encores. Royal roasting became the hottest ticket in town. For Meghan, this was brutal. Chris Rock hadn't just fired jokes into the air, he'd launched a movement. Every comedian who followed was now armed with his precision, his fearlessness, his blueprint. The strike was complete, but that was only round one, because the second wave, the British comedians, were about to go for the jugular.
And this is sweet. Meghan Markle said she has a finger they can use if they need it.
After Rock's opening salvo, the British comedy world pounced like wolves. Puppet shows, late-night satire, stand-up circuits, every corner of British humor united against Meghan and Harry. And their aim? To tear apart every detail of their new Hollywood lifestyle. The Brits had home advantage. They knew the monarchy, the culture, the traditions inside out. When they mocked Harry's obsession with his spot in the line of succession, the crowd didn't just laugh, they winced with recognition. It wasn't just funny, it was painful, because they knew the truth behind the joke.
I don't know how to break this to you, H. And if you weren't in the royal family, M wouldn't be with you.
And the Brits? They didn't hold back. They weren't doing gentle ribbing. They were swinging for the throat. The couple's cries for privacy while living next to Oprah became a running gag across the UK. Hypocrites, money grabbers, fame seekers. That became the dominant narrative, and the audiences agreed wholeheartedly. What made the British response sting so much was that it came from authority. These comedians knew what Harry had left behind. They knew the privilege, the protocol. the centuries of tradition. When they mocked him, it wasn't blind ridicule. It was cultural betrayal dressed as comedy. The stages turned into battlegrounds of cultural identity. The message was sharp and clear. You cannot trash the crown, cash in on its name, and expect sympathy. And the audiences, they ate it alive. But the cruelest cut of all, British comedians had grown up with Harry. They remembered the cheeky younger prince, the war hero, the beloved son of Diana. And now, to them, he wasn't a royal anymore. He was Meghan's Hollywood puppet. It wasn't just comedy anymore. It was mourning, cultural mourning disguised as jokes. The Edinburgh Festival became ground zero for royal mockery. Reviews described audiences as bloodthirsty, yes, bloodthirsty, for more Harry and Meghan material. One line summed it all up. I'm here to tell my truth and make a ton of money out of podcasting since I have no real talent. The laughter was savage, but the message was clear. Harry and Meghan were no longer part of British cultural life. They'd been officially excommunicated by comedy itself. And just when Meghan thought it couldn't get worse, America joined in. When America's late-night comedy machine locked its sights on Meghan and Harry, the war went industrial. These weren't small clubs anymore. This was primetime television with millions watching. Saturday Night Live, The Tonight Show, Conan, they all lined up to take their shots. And unlike the Brits, who focused on betrayal of tradition, the Americans went for something even more brutal. Pure entertainment value. Harry wasn't a prince anymore. He was a recurring comedy character. SNL painted him as a clueless dimwit. So out of touch, it became impossible to see him any other way. Audiences didn't just laugh. They cheered when his character appeared. And Meghan? She became the overbearing, fame-hungry wife. It was character assassination disguised as comedy skits. Jimmy Fallon nailed the sentiment when he joked about waking up at 5 a.m. to watch two married people get married, since Meghan admitted they tied the knot 3 days before the royal wedding. The joke wasn't just funny, it was vindication. Millions who felt duped by the fairy tale wedding suddenly had their frustrations voiced in a punchline. And then came Conan O'Brien, taking the mockery to bizarre, almost humiliating levels with his wax figure skit, reducing them to objects of creepy obsession. They weren't royals anymore, they weren't even celebrities, they were props. The cruelty of American comedy was its reach. These weren't niche jokes whispered in clubs. These were broadcast into living rooms across the globe, then amplified tenfold on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter. Suddenly, Meghan and Harry weren't just public figures, they were public clowns. And here's the kicker. Late-night comedy discovered something chilling. Jokes about Meghan and Harry pulled in ratings gold. Clips featuring them outperformed almost every other celebrity. The more they mocked, the more audiences tuned in. Meghan and Harry became the gift that kept on giving. But late night was only the warm-up. The online creator revolution was about to make the humiliation viral. TikTokers, YouTubers, Instagram comedians, they smelled blood. And unlike TV, they had no filters, no sponsors to appease, just raw, unfiltered mockery that spread like wildfire. Millions of creators realized Meghan content equals viral content. Her pretzel rebagging moment recreated endlessly with hilarious timing. Her obsession with correcting people about her name, it's Sussex, not Markle, that became a soundbite meme, replayed in thousands of parody videos, and audiences weren't just entertained, they were enraged. They weren't polished comedians, they were everyday people who felt duped, betrayed, insulted by the contradictions. When mom bloggers ranted about Meghan's hardship while living in a Montecito mansion, it hit harder than any late-night joke, because it was real people calling her out. And Meghan's attempts to fight back, every interview, every statement, every clarification, they became content. Her damage control wasn't control at all. It was fresh ammunition for millions of creators sharpening their comedic knives. But if that wasn't brutal enough, then came the cartoons. South Park's worldwide privacy tour was the cultural kill shot. The genius? It turned Meghan and Harry into caricatures of hypocrisy so perfect that they stuck permanently. Flying around on private jets, screaming about privacy through megaphones. It was the kind of satire that people never forget. Family Guy piled on, reducing them to lazy influencers cashing in on their royal names. Harry as an unemployed immigrant, Meghan as the fame-chasing wife. The imagery was permanent, the mockery immortalized. And here's the devastating truth. You can argue with an article, you can dispute an interview, but you cannot argue with a cartoon. Once South Park turned them into punchlines, they were locked there forever. But the most savage analysis didn't come from skits or TikToks or cartoons. It came from one man, Bill Maher. Maher didn't just joke, he philosophized. He exposed the heart of the problem with Meghan and Harry's narrative. Their entire worldview collapsed under his words. He said what everyone else had been hinting at. You cannot claim victimhood while bathing in luxury. You cannot demand sympathy while demanding attention. And then he drew the ultimate contrast: Meghan and Harry's endless whining against Queen Elizabeth's stoic, never complain, never explain. The comparison was devastating. The Queen's quiet dignity made their grievance tour look cheap, embarrassing, hollow. Maher's words cut deeper than any punchline. He diagnosed them as the ultimate case of privileged victimhood. And the audience didn't just laugh. They nodded, because it was truth. Truth they'd all felt but never been able to articulate. And in that moment, Meghan and Harry weren't just mocked, they were dismissed. Comedy had officially excommunicated them. From Chris Rock's scalpel, to British cultural mourning, to America's late-night slaughter, to viral creators, to cartoons, and finally Bill Maher's fatal philosophy, Meghan and Harry weren't just roasted, they were destroyed. And here's the brutal reality. Once you become a punchline, there is no coming back. Every future appearance only reminds people of why they laughed at you in the first place. Meghan and Harry had given comedians decades worth of material. Their contradictions were endless, their hypocrisy too tempting. What we witnessed wasn't just comedy, it was cultural rejection in real time. Laughter became rebellion against manipulation. The comedy world became the people's voice, and that voice was unanimous. Meghan and Harry were done. The verdict is final. They wanted sympathy. They got laughter instead. They wanted control of their narrative. Comedy seized it and never gave it back. So, the question isn't if they can recover. The question is, how do you rebuild when the whole world has already laughed you off the stage?